I'm your host, Robert Benkov. With me today in the Hauppauge, New York branch training room is Casey Klewicki, Turtle and Hughes Industrial Control Specialist and Safety Specialist, along with Gary Sarno, PLC and Safety Specialist, working from his New Jersey office. Hello, gentlemen. Thanks for joining us today. Today's topic will be on safety-related products. But first, a word from our sponsor, Turtle and Hughes. I'd like to inform you of an in-person event we'll be hosting at our Hauppauge branch, a summer kickoff open house barbecue, July 1st, 11 a.m. until 2 p.m. with our very own Chef Jeff Smith, the Hauppauge branch manager. If you're interested in attending, please message me so that I can add you to the guest list. Thanks, everyone, and let's begin. Hey, Casey, what's going on? How was your ride in this morning?
Thank you, Robert.
Oh, let me mute.
Not so bad.
Told you, Gary, I'd mess up. Go ahead.
No, not so bad. It was a pretty breezy ride. We didn't have too much traffic for once, so can't complain. An hour and a half. So could I begin?
Yep, go ahead.
All right. So I'm going to start this slideshow. Just a second, and let me know when you can see my slideshow. Let's play it from the beginning.
Good to go.
Good to go?
Yeah.
All right. So again, thank you guys for joining this session of Talk Tech with Turtle. And again, I'm Casey Klewicki. I'm an industrial control specialist for Turtle and Hughes. And I also am a safety specialist. And joining me today is Gary Sarno, who is our lead safety specialist and who also dabbles in PLCs, HMIs, and just like Robert, just about everything in automation. And today we just wanted to go over sort of an overview of safety products and, some of the updates that have occurred over the last, 10 or so years, or even more recently in the last 5 years. So when we're looking back when safety measures used to be limited to things like hard guarding and electromechanical access switches, adhering to safety procedures often meant shutting down all or a portion of your machines and lines. And when you couple modern technology with some of the governmental regulations and just an overall emphasis on protecting personnel and assets, these have all resulted in making that stigma of, safety hindering production, that's sort of a thing of the past at this point. So again, we're just going to briefly touch on a lot of the things that we're able to offer from a product, a software, and a services perspective. And when we're looking at the entire safety portfolio, Rockwell Automation is in a unique position to be able to offer the whole, breadth of a safety system offering. And what I mean by that is there are a lot of different niche vendors that we have in the safety market that, they might deal with guard locking switches or safety relays or IO or controllers or that kind of thing. But, just looking at this image, you can see that Rockwell Automation not only has, the switches, the end devices like light curtains and e-stops and GuardLink, but there's plenty of different options for safety IO, 2 different controllers for safety, and all, being developed in the same Studio 5000 environment that many of you are used to. So anything from e-stop sensors, light curtains, guard switches, point IO, network switches. This integration of safety devices and systems has made safety a lot more productive, efficient, and easier to implement than ever before. You don't have these different conflicting vendors going into the same safety system. And again, the same Studio 5000 environment is going to be able to configure all of these things. And in the top right corner, we'll touch briefly on this towards the end, but Safety Automation Builder is another piece of software that you can help develop your safety system before implementing. So again, one of the differentiators for Rockwell Automation is again that we're able to provide the full safety system. So you can have controls and safety systems on the same network, delivering both standard and safety systems to the same Guardlogix or compact Guardlogix controller without the need for additional panels, wiring, switches, and those kinds of things. And again, we're not going to really get into the weeds in terms of the technical specifications or all the different things that go into what makes a performance level or a safety integrity level or anything like that. But I'm going to hand it over to Gary, who's just going to go over some of the control offerings that we do have. So, Gary.
All right. Good morning, everybody. Hope everybody is well. I guess I'm going to be working off of your slides, right, Casey?
Yep.
All right. So before I get started in the control components, I wanted to just touch briefly on just I guess some of the ratings that we see associated with some of the safety devices. So I get often questions where people might say, well, I'm designing, I need my machine to be Cat 3. What components can I use for that? Or something along those lines. And so I just wanted to clarify a little bit of a few items. So typically, when you see safety devices, you see ratings on it of maybe like a PLD, SIL2, and you'll see sometimes associated, you hear sometimes Category 3 or Category 4 ratings based on the components. So basically, just to kind of clarify the difference, I mean, there's not a huge difference between them, but just so everyone understands. So the category rating is basically a measure of control reliability of the given process or that machine. So a greater ability to withstand faults signifies a higher possible risk reduction overall to the system. Performance level is similar and the same as it goes along with SIL. SIL and performance are almost virtually the same, but they now take in consideration the reliability of the individual components and the combination of components in that safety control system. So they end up taking into consideration other measures like mean time between failure or failures per hour. So you'll see that represented as MTTF or PFH on the spec sheets. So performance level and SIL level kind of look at everything overall, where category tends to be more of the architecture or structure of that safety circuit. So if you've seen a slide here, we have IEC 61508 standard that sort of gave birth to a lot of these other standards. Some of them are very specific in particular to different industries. Our industry, dealing with machinery, we're going to focus more on ISO 13849 and IEC 62061 or 061. You can go to the next one, Casey. So these two standards we just spoke about, you can see the similarities between the two. ISO 13849 focuses on that performance level, mean time between failure, diagnostic coverage, and common cause failures. IEC 62061 does as well. Other than the diagnostic area, they label it more as safe failure fraction. There's similarities between the formulas that are used to calculate these, and the SIL levels tend to be a little bit more complicated and tend to be more focused in that processing or chemical type industry, and the performance level we tend to see more in the machinery area. We're going to focus primarily more on 13849. That's the standard that's more closely followed in the as far as the machinery design standard. Okay, we can go to. So as far as safety control overview, the control products that we offer, we start off in our single function safety relays, which would be for more of our simpler applications. We then move into slightly more complex applications. We then look at our configurable safety relay. And then obviously our most complex applications, we go into our safety PLCs, which are either compact Garlogix or standard control type Garlogix controllers. And I'll get a little bit slightly more in detail in the next slides. There you go. So our safety function, our single function safety relays, again, we're going to look at these for more of our basic applications. This here featured is our GSR safety relay, our newest family of safety relays. These have universal safety inputs on them. So where in the past you may had to have made a selection on your safety relays based on whether you're using a more of a dumb safety device like an e-stop, or one of the smarter safety devices like the SensorGuard that have their own type of diagnostics and monitoring within it. This safety relay can automatically configure itself to be used for either one of them. So this one safety relay we can use here on area scanners, light curtains, safety mats, interlocks, e-stops. It uses a optical bus technology. So when we use this Ethernet module that's slated in the picture in the middle, we can communicate to up to 6 of these GSR safety relays through each other. And there's an add-on profile for that that Ethernet module. So when you're working in your Studio Logix software environment, you can look at the different relays that you have on that optical bus. It'll generate tag data for it, and you can now use the diagnostics and monitoring information to use in your program. It does not allow you to perform safety functions over Ethernet. This is not a SIP safety device. It's a standard Ethernet device for monitoring diagnostics. There's different relays available. We have a single dual channel version, a dual channel version. There's expansion modules. There's modules that have time delay on them for performing different types of stops. And safety stop categories are also another rating. So there's a stop category 0, category 1, and category 2. These are not to be confused with the safety category ratings. It's a whole other part of the e-stop standard. You can also interlock these relays together to create schemes for zoning or to create like a one relay to be a global e-stop, while the others may only stop part of the process. And we can interlock these relays together using a single wire safety connection. So it's a single wire, it's a pulsed 24-volt DC signal that interlocks the relays together. They poll each other to make sure that they're all online and they're all functioning properly. And then you can have them turn off or on based on your safety scheme using that single wire relay. So it saves a lot of wiring as far as wiring any type of and or not logic between the devices. Configuration to the relay is done with just a turn pot on the front. Again, it's a simpler way to configure the device rather than use having to wire in a logic scheme. And it is a TUV approved process. The front dial, there's a process that you need to go through to configure it. It's not so much of just turn the dial and we're right there. Okay, we can go to the next one, Casey. So as we move into more complex safety schemes and single function safety relays may start to become cost prohibitive or too complex to implement for the system we're looking at, we have more of a mid-range solution, which would be the Guardmaster CR30. So the CR30, I mean, you look at it, it kind of looks familiar. It sort of looks like a micro 830 controller. And that's the only commonality they had between the micro 830. So it's not actually a PLC control. It's a configurable safety relay. So basically just the housing is used and it's red to signify safety. But the internals are very similar to what the Guardmaster, to what the GSR safety relays are. Same thing, a lot of the inputs on here could be configurable for many different types of safety input products. There's 22 embedded safety I/O points on this. I believe 10 of them are configurable. There's space for 2 additional plugins on the front of the module, so you can use micro 2080 I/O on here. So if you have any type of enunciation or non-safety I/O that you need to use, you can use one of those 2080 modules to avoid using valuable safety I/O. There's also an Ethernet module that's available to plug on the front too. What the Ethernet module allows you to do is allows you to use a CR30 add-on profile within Studio 5000 programming environment. So it takes the configuration environment for the CR30, brings it into Studio 5000, and allows you to do your relay configuration there. And then you can download it from Studio 5000 to the CR30 and the configuration portion of that relay is then embedded in as part of the ACD file. So now you can have your configuration for your relay and your PLC logic all saved in the same file, and you don't have to worry about separate files being elsewhere. Otherwise, if you don't use the Ethernet module, you can use Connected Components Workbench to configure the CR30. So Connected Components Workbench, also known as CCW, is a free software download from Rockwell. It's used as to program micro PLCs, component level HMI, a few different safety products. Not only the CR30 are configured with CCW, drive configuration is done. So the software does a lot of different items, but we can also use it obviously right here to configure the CR30. The CR30 also, you can also protect the code, the safety code in it with a password, so that there's to eliminate unauthorized use. It also creates a safety validation code. So it's a unique 4-digit code that's created once the safety program is validated and it's set in place. And this is valuable in that if you go to the field on a piece of equipment that you found that was maybe not functioning correctly, and then when you look up the validation code and you see that validation code is different than what your records indicate, then you know that someone had gone in there and they had altered the code. But obviously it's best to password protect this stuff, because you don't want just anybody going in and playing around with the safety portion of the program. We can go to the next one, Casey. So now when we get into our much more complex safety schemes, we now start to look at safety PLC controllers. So what we have our newer family of controllers. I'm sure everyone's familiar with the 5069 family. That encompasses the Compact Logix family and the Contrologix family. There's safety versions of those controllers as well. What separates the 5380 Compact Logix controller from the current also 1769 controllers, which also offer a safety version, is that in the new safety controllers, they're scalable. In the 1769 version, your options were a PLE SIL3 controller, and you're basically you can choose between different and that controller was also motion enabled, and basically your choices were to memory size. Now with the newer controllers, we can choose between a SIL2 PLD controller or a SIL3 PLE controller. So depending, now we can kind of scale the controller to our projects. The SIL2 version you can choose with or without motion enabled. The SIL3 controllers have motion enabled. You'll find that I think the status somewhere around like 80% of machinery safety applications tend to fall in that SIL2 area. But this is something that, you know, a risk assessment that you should perform on your project or your application beforehand will help you determine. Other than that, the specifications for the 5380 safety controller are identical to the standard version. 1 gigabit Ethernet ports. Same thing with the standard memory sizes, supports up to 180 Ethernet nodes and 32 axis of motion. The 5069 family of controllers support an additional set of drive safety instructions that the 1769 safety controllers and the Contrologix controllers do not support. So this is it's a additional value as well as the scaling. So one of the other benefits of safety controllers over the configurable safety relays and obviously single function safety relays is its flexibility for your applications. So obviously much more complex applications can be controlled with this, since the safety logic is being written as opposed to something that's just sort of set at with the single function safety controllers, or a set of pre-selected function blocks with the configurable safety controllers. In your logix view, the safety is performed in a separate loss of words, subsection in the controller. So safety instructions cannot be used in a standard instruction area, and so it separates the safety portion of the controller from the standard version of the programming. And there's ways to intermingle with the two of them. There's sorry, I'm getting a little lost for words. There's as far as I/O goes with the safety controller, there is local safety I/O available for the controller now. In the past, we had to look at something like point I/O that had safety modules. Now there's local safety modules available for compact logix, as well as control logix. One of the nice things is you can mix standard I/O along with safety I/O on the same controller. Same thing is with Ethernet. We can now perform, we also can perform safety over Ethernet with the safety controller. So we do have some devices that are capable of safety over Ethernet. Our PowerFlex drives, some of them have capabilities of safety over Ethernet. Kinetics servo motion drives do. We have the MAB interlock, light curtains that can perform safety over Ethernet, and eventually there's an area scanner coming out also that can perform safety over Ethernet. So the nice thing about these is that they cut down considerably on your wiring. So now it's only an Ethernet wire that gets connected between the PLC and these individual devices. They're highly configurable, highly customizable to your application. And the nice thing is that it's standard Ethernet communication. It just operates on a different layer within the Ethernet signal. So again, that reduces wiring because now your standard control and your safety control are performed under the same signal. Again, SIL 2 and SIL 3 versions. The smaller size controller that you see in the upper left-hand corner, that's the SIL 2 version. The SIL 3 version is a little bigger on the bottom. The reason why it's bigger to meet the SIL 3 PLE standard, it has a second CPU built into the controller, and that is the safety partner. So what that second CPU does, it runs in tandem with the primary CPU. And in the event that that primary CPU were to fail, that secondary CPU would take over and ensure that the safety function is performed, that the safety function is performed and executed as designed. We can go to the next slide. So this is the Garlogix, the 5580 controller, which is the control logix version. A lot of what I explained about the compact logix version is the same with the control logix version. Same thing with this is the 5580 controller you see right here as part of the 5069 family. That also, the newer drive safety instructions are part of that. 1 gig Ethernet port communication, SIL 2 and SIL 3 versions. Pictured there is the SIL 3 version. So you see the primary CPU has the key switch on it. Next to it, the solid orange one is the safety partner. Again, for SIL 3 applications, the safety partner is required. In SIL 2 applications, it's not. So if you had a SIL 2 application, you would just have that primary CPU and not the secondary CPU or the safety partner. All right, you can go to the next one. So this is a little overview of what our I/O options are as far as safety. So again, 1756 control logix, 1769 compact logix. We didn't have any local IO chassis options in the past. We had to look at primarily point IO modules, or maybe some of the armor block when they came out not too long ago. Now for Contrologix controllers, we do have 1756 local chassis IO. You see in the picture, those are the red modules. So to distinguish safety modules from standard modules, we have the where did we go there? Yeah, we have the red doors on the modules to clearly indicate, and we can again mix safety and standard in the chassis. Flex IO, typically used as process distributed IO. Standard Flex IO does not have safety modules, but the new Flex 5000 family does. So we have a number of safety modules available for that one now. Flex 5000 IO can only be used with the 5069 family of compact and Contrologix controllers. It cannot be used with the older 1769 or the L7 and lower Contrologix controllers. Then we move over and we have the Compact 5000 module. So this is Compact 5000 is the native local IO for 5380 Compact Logix controllers. And we do now have local safety IO available for those modules. Again, the Compact 5000 IO can be used as local chassis IO, or there's a ENT module that can allow you to use Compact 5000 as distributed IO. Compact 5000 IO can be used with obviously Compact Logix controllers, both local and distributed, and it can also be used with Contrologix 5580 controllers as distributed IO. But again, cannot be used with the older L7 and older controllers. Point IO modules. These are probably the most popular with machinery design designers and OEMs. It's low cost, low density, doesn't take up a lot of room. This product is been around for a while. Safety IO modules are available on this, and safety IO with the point IO can be used with all the current PLC offerings. Well, I shouldn't say all the current PLC, all the safety controllers, the newer 5069 family safety controllers, as well as the 1769 Compact Logix and the L7 older Contrologix. They can all communicate with point IO, as well as the armor block modules. So if you have any applications where, well, we need to connect a couple safety components, but we don't have a distribution box nearby, it's not really doesn't pay to add an enclosure and add another whole block of safety modules, well, then we have the armor block solution, safety rated on machine IO modules. They're all rated IP67. So again, it eliminates you having to add another enclosure and adding more wiring. The armor block can communicate over Ethernet. So now again, we eliminate that wiring. We're running a single wire Ethernet wire over to the armor block. We're then wiring our safety devices into the armor block and then communicating that information back. You can, next one. So out of all these, which is best for my application? You know, and again, that question really comes down to how complex is your application? So again, single function safety relays, simple applications. E-stop and maybe outputs controlling a safe torque off, or some type of safety contactor, maybe used as like a master control relay or something along those. Nothing overly complicated. Typically, I think when probably 3 or 4 of the safety relays, once you get into applications that requiring that or more, it might start to become a little more cost prohibitive. And that's probably where you want to start looking into more of the middle solution, which would be the CR30. It'll eliminate a little bit of panel space. It kind of, you'll keep your configuration into one spot, and it would bring your cost down a little bit. If you add the Ethernet module, obviously that increases a little bit, costs a little bit, but then it also allows you integration with the Logix platform. It also allows you over Ethernet to now monitor diagnostics, and enunciation can be performed over Ethernet through the tags in the PLC program. You can also perform up to 5 zones with the CR30. So again, it becomes a little it's a little easier to perform control zoning with the CR30 than it is with the GSR relays. I did forget to mention that the CR30 also has a single wire safety. So if you needed more than one CR30 or needed to expand using the GSR relays, they are compatible, and you can do that with that single wire safety. Obviously, our most complex systems, we're going to start looking at the safety controls, the safety controller. Anything that, when you're looking at, I would say 3 or 4 zones or more, and you're getting into multiple safety input devices, and maybe areas where you need to monitor hazardous motion and time delays on your gates and stuff like that. We might want to start looking at safety controllers in that aspect. For certain applications like that, or smaller applications, I should say, you can do some of the time delay with the CR30 and with some of the different GSR modules. But if you have multiple gates that you're doing this with, and multiple areas and motion that needs to be monitored, then we want to look at a safety controller. If you're doing a lot of drive motion, servo motion, then certainly a safety controller will make that much easier. Same thing with some VFD motion. So again, it really comes down to how complex your system is. So again, if you're using, find that you need multiple single function safety relays, you might want to look at the CR30. But if your system is starting to get large with a lot of different safety input devices and a lot of different safety output devices, or you're using a lot of motion that have Ethernet safety capability or drives, then we probably want to look at the safety controllers. And the fact now that we can scale the safety controllers to whether we want a SIL 2 or SIL 3 version makes this solution a lot more cost effective than it has ever been. So you may find that safety controller isn't going to be so much more cost prohibitive as it may have been in the past. But again, there's some additional programming and stuff that you need to be able to handle. Next slide. So outside of those areas that I just mentioned, the safety controller and safety relays, there is another safety product that's been out a little bit more recently, called GuardLink. So GuardLink uses it's a GSR DG is the name of the safety relay, and it's used in conjunction with the Ethernet module. And what this essentially creates is a safety communication bus where you can use these T-taps on here, or these safety taps and drops, and you can drop if you have an application, say, where you have many gates or many access doors. For instance, I've had a customer application recently that was an oven, and the oven was fairly long through the factory, and they had a number of e-stops along the oven. So rather than have all these e-stops hardwired back to a safety relay and some remote cabinet, we were able to use a GuardLink safety relay, and then using just these trunk lines, it uses standard cord sets and run the standard cord sets along the length of the oven using these T-taps, dropping e-stops down. So it greatly eliminated the amount of wiring because everything was just a cord set, and all these devices would just wire right to these T-taps and communicate back to the DG relay. There's an add-on profile in Studio that you would use to look at the relay configuration. And from in there, you can see the number of e-stops or different devices you have on there, and you can now control, how they respond. Again, you're not performing a safety function over Ethernet to the controller. You're just performing the configuration, and you're doing monitoring and diagnostics. All the intelligence is being done through the GSR relay. The taps get selected based on the device that you're using. So smart devices like the SensorGuard pictured in the first two, there's a tap designated for that. And then for the e-stops, there's a different tap. There's a 440G LZ locking interlock. That's the third device over. There's a T-tap available for that one as well, so you can perform guard locking applications on this as well. You can the length of the trunk can go up to 1,000-meter distance. You have typically a maximum 30 meters between devices, and I think with the newer firmware release that might have even been extended. And then typically about 10 meters drop from the tap of the device. So this could be a good solution for applications where you have, again, many of the same safety devices over a long length of space. And if you go to the next one, and I think, yeah, so that's what I have for right now. Casey's going to speak to you on a few of the newer products that we have available, and I think he's going to wrap it up.
Thanks, Gary. Can you hear me?
Yep, I hear you.
Okay, cool. Wasn't sure if I was muted. So one of the key points that Gary touched on a couple of times is the scalability. And when it comes to scalability and flexibility in your safety system, this is one of the products that we really wanted to show you guys. The multifunctional access box with or without SIP safety, I guess I should say, because this is available with, looking at the top right up here. What we're able to do with this is, again, with a single Ethernet cable, we're able to bring this safety function onto your HMI, your safety controller, and up into the design software, the Studio 5000 Logix environment. And when I talk about scalability, what I mean by that is there's a lot of different options with this. You can see this one has an e-stop. It's got the right-handed handle, and it has 4 different push buttons, which are all, you can be very flexible and customizable when it comes to these. And so when we talked about SIP safety over Ethernet, it's really bringing, a data-rich safety signal complete with duality, diagnostics, and diversity, which are, the 3 Ds of safety that we hear all the time when you're learning about it. And again, the MAB offers a lot of different options for those push buttons, for, the e-stop placement, illuminated, non-illuminated, that kind of thing. And really what this SIP safety, and we'll touch briefly on it in a couple of slides, what it's really doing is it's allowing for safety logic and safety control over Ethernet and bringing it straight to a PLC. So again, we're reducing wiring, we're reducing, some of the panel space where you may have needed an interposing relay to bring that signal onto the control system. These are all things that are going to be streamlining your system, making it faster, easier to commission and implement and maintain. And again, this is going to be something that goes up to PLE, Cat4. We have unique RFID codes, which is something that you'll see across a lot of our safety switches, both in guard locking and non-contact interlock switches. And again, we'll touch briefly on those in the coming slides. But again, when it comes to scalability and flexibility in safety, this is one of those things that seems to have gone under the radar. Multifunction access box can really, really help make your safety a little bit more efficient and streamlined. We also briefly touched on the 440G LZ. This is our most popular guard locking switch. This is our bread and butter, and this thing has been around forever. I don't see it ever going away. It's great for partial body access. It's another one of those switches that we have both standard and unique coding on it. So that's a a matter of the actuator being able to work with other switches or not. Again, there are OSSD solid state outputs. We have the power to release and the power to lock options, which is something that is not always the case when it comes to guard locking switches. Sometimes it's a either or. In the alignment guide, that's another thing that you're going to see across all our guard locking switches is the ease of alignment. And there's a lot of, give there and a lot of flexibility when we're talking about mounting. So the 440G LZ is, again, that's for partial body access. And one of the newest releases from Rockwell is the MZ, which takes a lot of the same technologies and the same, what has made the LZ so successful and apply it to a full body access, 2,500 Newton application. You can see the differences in terms of the locking of the actuator. Again, it's very flexible. You can have it on 270 degrees around the switch itself, so you don't necessarily have to mate it up, a 90-degree, mounting. And again, this is another one that can achieve PLE, Cat 4, SIL 3, and another one with the good wash down ratings of IP69K. So again, these are when it comes to guard locking switches, it's hard to go in and say this one is flexible, scalable, that kind of thing. But when you look at all of the different options, standard and unique coded, and the different mounting options, the LZ, you can mount it in 4 different ways. These are giving you a lot more flexibility when you're looking at a line or a machine. You're saying, how am I going to prevent access to this? You don't only have one option. There's a few different ways that you can accomplish the same goal. It's something that you're going to see a lot in safety as a theme. Going on to the non-contact, and again, when we talk about bread and butter, the SensaGuard is definitely our highest selling when it comes to non-contact interlock switches. And you see these everywhere. You'll see a lot of different companies have very similar ones in yellow, but this is really like one of the most popular safety switches, period, across the industry. And there's reasons. It's really highly flexible. You have stainless steel options, the barrels with 18 and 30 millimeter actuators. You have the flat packs. These are all going to be IP69K washdown rated, high pressure washdown. There's LED indication on these. There's a lot of different mounting flexibility and alignment, compensation. It's a really good, flexible, scalable, non-contact interlock switch. And to the right, we have another one of the newer, which it looks like it's similar to the SensaGuard. It's actually a little bit more similar to the previous slide with the LZ and the MZ. This is a guard locking switch as well, and you'll see with the 500 Newton holding force. This is something that when we talk about the same type of scalability that we saw in the GSR versus the CR30 versus the compact guard and the regular Guardlogix. You'll see some of the same scalability, good, better, best kind of options. Depending on your application, you might not need 2,500 Newtons of holding force in order to keep a small door closed without permission. So things like this or again, you have your options. Do you want non-contact? Do you want something that's going to be more of a magnetic force, but not necessarily as strong as a 440G MZ? That might be a little bit too much for what you're looking for in your application. So something like the new EZ might fall right into that breadbasket for you. So moving on to the light curtains. The 450L is our newest. There are a couple of different options, both a basic version, which provides, your standard light curtain, not much in terms of the additional information coming back or anything like that. And the enhanced version, the 450LE is what we call it, has the option for SIP safety over Ethernet IP. So again, this is something that we've talked about on a couple of different product offerings. It's something that our controllers are capable of taking in, and that allows for the single cable, Ethernet cable, to provide the safety and control signal back to the controller, which is huge in terms of the scalability. Again, another theme that we're looking at when it comes to safety. This is something that we have in a huge breadth of lengths, and you can cascade them. You can you can mount them around corners. There's all kinds of accessories in terms of mirrors, different plugins. And one of the things that we like to touch on with these guys is you have the option, just traditionally light curtains will have either a transmitter or a receiver. And what this, the new 450L gives you the option for is a universal plug-in, which what you do is you'll have, light curtains that are essentially, they can be a transmitter or a receiver. What you do is you plug in this plug-in, and there's a dip switch on it that will indicate, is this going to be a receiver or a transmitter? And so you can have, a ton of these on the shelves, and you don't necessarily have to have one transmitter plug-in, one receiver plug-in for each one of those. You never know when you might be, cascading them or doing different applications where you need to have the ability to use either a transmitter or a receiver for these. Again, the anytime a new light curtain comes out, the alignment is easier. There's an LED indication for when you have reached the alignment on your receiver and transmitter. So these things are always getting better and better from series to series, and this is no different. This one is giving us a lot of options for mounting, for cascading, muting, blanking, all those good things that you expect in an Allen Bradley light curtain. So just touching on the plug-in that I mentioned. So this is the one that is going to bring you onto Ethernet, and there is this module that is, similar to one of the, Armor Block IOs in terms of the looks. This is something that is going to, again, be able to provide the safety and control signal over Ethernet IP to bring it straight to the controller. And this is on the 450LE, the enhanced version of the newer 450L light curtains. It supports the device level ring. You can cascade them, as I was mentioning in the previous slide. And again, one of the things that you'll see across all of our safety products is the integration into, whether it's CCW, the Connected Components Workbench free software, or if it's Studio 5000, the add-on profiles and instructions and things like that make the commission of something like this, when you're talking about a safety product and the programming going into it, this makes it so much easier to commission and to program and ultimately to maintain your safety devices. And the 450L is no different. It's got the AOPs for Studio 5000. And again, when you look at all those things combined, it really does reduce the total cost of ownership for these kinds of things. So again, where is it used? It's wherever a safety light curtain is used. This isn't really going to be changing in terms of the applications that you guys would use these on. It's just a matter of you have a little bit more capability from each. Even the basic version is going to give you a bit more capability than you're used to in a traditional light curtain. So these would be, again, this is the plug-in module and the I/O for it. So this will bring it onto the network and get your signal onto the PLC. So again, safety and control going over the SIP safety. And these are some of the minimum requirements. You do need to have Logix 5000 to be able to take in those SIP safety signals. And you're not going to be doing this on a GSR or anything like that. You want to incorporate this into one of the higher safety controllers. So with that, that's really, in terms of the product overview, that's where we wanted to touch on. There's obviously a full breadth of safety products in our portfolio that we reviewed in the first and second slides. So Gary touched on, we have area scanners that are coming out that'll be on SIP safety. We have encoders that are on SIP safety, the light curtains, the multifunction access box. And when it comes to the logic, the GSR is as universal and scalable as any on the market. It's really great for universal inputs, the e-stops, the light curtains, the safety mats, all on the same thing. So that we wanted to show you guys in terms of just the products and the hardware. But really, a lot of the time, the hardest part when it comes to safety is, where do you begin? And so Rockwell and Turtle and Hughes are able to offer, again, from the ground up, able to help you with your safety system. Machinery Safe Book 5, they are probably not going to have a new, Machinery Safe Book 6 for a couple of years now. This is the latest and greatest in terms of just where do you begin with safety? What does it take to reach a PLE? Why would you need PLE? What are sort of the qualifications that you need to run through in order to figure out what your safety system requirements are? SafeBook 5 is a great thing. I consider it when it comes to safety. It is my holy book. It's something that you got to look at, and I have tons of highlighters and bookmarks in there to use as sort of a guide when looking at a safety system. RASWIN software is really where a lot of people will begin, because risk assessments are arguably the most important part of any safety system, is figuring out the requirements. And RASWIN 4.0, the latest installment from the Rockwell Automation Risk Assessment Software, is a really great software tool to help you walk through a risk assessment, because that can be one of the more complicated things. You're involving everybody from designers, engineers, operators, maintenance personnel, and looking at every single function of a machine or a process. And then you kind of have to implement, okay, well, what's the dumbest thing that somebody can possibly do? And when you start looking at all the different factors that go into a risk assessment and the hazard and the avoidability and the probability of avoidance, all those things can get really, really complicated. So having a single environment where you can kind of put in all those factors and have it generate an output of what are you going to need in your system. It's a really useful tool. A lot of people use it when they're designing a new system, especially OEMs. Sistema is actually a third-party software, and it's used for the evaluation of safety-related parts of control systems. And this is sort of a screenshot of what that software will look like. This is one of those decision trees that you'll see all over the place. It's in Machinery Safe Book 5. It's on a lot of the different from whether you're talking to Rockwell or other vendors, a lot of people will use this same sort of decision tree, which is looking at, what's the hazard, what's the severity of the injury, the frequency of that hazard occurring, the probability of avoidance, all those things. When you're looking at, a high or low on each one of those factors, that'll bring you to your performance level or your SIL level. So in this situation, we're looking at an extreme of PLE. And as Gary mentioned earlier, the vast majority of safety systems will fall under the SIL 2 PLD window, but oftentimes there's more complexities, more dangerous hazards that go into it, and that will result in something that looks a lot like this line, which is a PLE. So again, we wanted to show you guys that it's not just the hardware, it's also there's a lot of software, there's a lot of services that we can provide. And that's really one of the biggest things that differentiates us from the rest of the market, is there's really nobody that can provide from start to finish a full safety control system. And again, this is our theme of the day is scalability and flexibility. And I think with our products, software, and services, there's no one that really can compete in that aspect. So with that, I think we're just about set. And I'd like to open up the chat for questions. If anybody has any questions, application notes, or anything like that that you want to review, the floor is yours. Thank you, guys.
Okay, we have a couple of minutes left here. So again, if anybody has any questions, feel free to unmute. At this time, we'll do our best to answer those questions. If not, if we don't have any questions, I'd like to thank everyone for your time. Our next presentation will be on Thursday, July 8th from 10 a.m. to 11 a.m. We will be covering the topic of power quality. We also will begin to hold in-person training as well as other automation events. So please take a look at the Turtle webpage and pay attention to your emails on these upcoming events. Thanks again, and have a happy and, of course, safe 4th of July. And we hope to see you here at the Hop Hog Ranch for our open house barbecue event and at the next Talk Tech with Turtle. Thanks, everyone.